Before you sleep tonight, remember this: somewhere in the darkness, a Titan still carries the weight of every star you see, and he has never rested, not once, in 3,000 years. Good evening, and welcome back to another journey through the strange, beautiful, and often heartbreaking world of Greek mythology. I'm your Sleepless Historian, and tonight we're exploring one of the most enduring images from the ancient world, a figure so iconic that his name has become synonymous with strength, endurance, and the crushing weight of responsibility. Tonight we tell the story of Atlas, the Titan who holds up the sky. As always, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight, and whether you're settling in for sleep or simply seeking a quiet escape into the distant past. Wherever you are, whatever brings you here, I'm grateful for your company on this journey into myth and memory. But before we meet the Titan himself, you need to understand the war that created his eternal punishment. The story of Atlas begins not with the Titan himself, but with a war that shook the very foundations of existence. This was the Titanomachy, the 10-year war between the older generation of gods, the Titans, and their children, the Olympians, led by Zeus. Picture, if you can, a time before time as we know it. The world was younger then, ruled by powers so ancient and vast that they had no need for temples or prayers. These were the Titans, the children of Gaia the earth and Uranus the sky, beings of such fundamental force that they were the mountains and the seas, the winds and the seasons themselves. Kronos ruled this ancient order, having overthrown his own father in a cycle of violence that seemed destined to repeat forever. He had devoured his own children to prevent the prophecy that foretold his downfall. But Zeus, hidden away as an infant, had grown to challenge this cannibalistic tyranny, and when Zeus finally returned to claim his birthright, the cosmos itself would tremble. The war began with a choice that would echo through eternity. When Zeus freed his swallowed siblings from their father's belly and called for allies to overthrow the old order, the Titans faced a decision that would define their fates. Some, like Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus, chose to side with the young Olympians. Others, bound by loyalty or perhaps simply by the weight of tradition, stood with Kronos and the old ways. Atlas was among these traditionalists, though whether from conviction or simple loyalty to his lineage, we cannot know. What we do know is that his choice would cost him everything. The war itself defies easy description. Imagine conflicts fought not with swords and shields, but with earthquakes and hurricanes, with mountains hurled like stones and seas boiled away to nothing. When Titans fought, continents shifted. When Zeus's lightning met Kronos' scythe, the very fabric of reality caught fire. For 10 years, this cosmic struggle raged across the breadth of creation. Cities that had never been built crumbled. Forests burned with fires that would never be lit. The earth itself grew weary of war. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Zeus's secret weapon that would end everything. The tide of war turned not through strength alone, but through an alliance that changed everything. Zeus descended into the deepest pits of Tartarus, the prison where his grandfather Uranus had cast the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, beings so terrible that even the Titans feared them. There, in chains of adamant, Zeus found his salvation. He freed these ancient prisoners, and in gratitude, they forged for him weapons of unimaginable power. The Cyclopes crafted Zeus's thunderbolts, while the 100-handed ones became living siege engines, each capable of hurling boulders with the force of avalanches. With these new allies, the Olympians pressed their final assault. The battle was apocalyptic in its scope and fury. Mountains were reduced to dust, oceans boiled, the very sky cracked like broken pottery. When the dust finally settled, the Titans lay defeated. Kronos was cast into Tartarus, along with most of his supporters. But Zeus, in his wisdom or perhaps his cruelty, reserved a special punishment for Atlas, the general who had led the Titan armies with such skill and determination. You haven't heard the most devastating part yet. The moment Atlas learned what his punishment would truly cost him, The punishment Zeus devised for Atlas was elegant in its symbolism and absolute in its cruelty. Rather than imprisonment in Tartarus with the other defeated titans, Atlas would bear a burden that would make him a living monument to the consequences of defying the new order. "You fought to preserve the old cosmos," Zeus declared, his voice carrying the weight of divine judgment. "Now you shall hold up the new one." With words that rewrote the laws of reality, Zeus condemned Atlas to stand at the western edge of the world and hold up the sky itself, not for a year, or a century, or even a millennium, but for all time. The heavens with all their stars and planets, their winds and weather, would rest upon Atlas's shoulders until the end of days. But here's what makes this punishment so particularly cruel. Atlas was not simply carrying a physical weight. The sky, in Greek cosmology, was not empty space, but the dwelling place of the gods themselves, a living realm of divine power and cosmic order. Atlas was not just holding up a roof, he was supporting the very structure of reality, the framework within which all existence played out. Every prayer uttered by mortals, every divine decree, every star that blazed across the night, all of it pressed down upon Atlas's shoulders with a weight that grew heavier with each passing age. And at this very moment, something began to change in Atlas that even Zeus had not foreseen. As the weight of the cosmos settled upon his shoulders, Atlas felt something he had never experienced in all his eons of existence: true solitude. The other titans were gone, locked away in Tartarus, or scattered to the winds. The new generation of gods dwelt far above him, on Olympus, concerned with their own affairs and mortals' prayers. Atlas stood alone at the edge of everything, holding up the world with no companionship save the weight itself. But solitude, as any prisoner knows, can be a kind of teacher. In the endless hours of his vigil, Atlas began to understand things that had escaped him during the chaos of war. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the rhythm of the seasons cycling overhead. He learned the patterns of the stars, their births and deaths playing out in the cosmic theater he held aloft. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. Mortals were born and lived and died entire lifetimes in the space between Atlas's heartbeats. Civilizations rose and fell while he stood motionless, his consciousness expanding to encompass not just the physical weight he bore, but an understanding of time and existence that perhaps only Zeus himself could match. But the greatest test of Atlas's endurance was still to come, in the form of an unexpected visitor. The first break in Atlas's eternal routine came in the form of his brother Prometheus, though it was not a reunion either would remember fondly. Prometheus, who had sided with Zeus during the war, had nonetheless earned his own punishment for the crime of stealing fire and giving it to humanity. Chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains, Prometheus endured his own eternal torment. Each day an eagle tore out his liver, and each night it grew back ready to be devoured anew. But unlike Atlas, Prometheus's punishment came with the possibility, however remote, of eventual freedom. When their eyes met across the vast distances that separated them, both brothers understood something profound about the nature of divine justice. It was not concerned with fairness, or proportion, or even logic. It was concerned with power, and the maintenance of that power through spectacular demonstrations of consequence. Atlas could not speak to his brother. The weight of the sky made such luxuries impossible. But in that moment of recognition, something passed between them. A shared understanding of what it meant to be a cautionary tale, written across the cosmos in flesh and suffering. Everything you've heard so far was only the beginning. The real story starts with the hero, who dared to ask Atlas for help. The most famous encounter in Atlas's long vigil came centuries later, when a hero of Zeus's bloodline sought him out on a seemingly impossible quest. Heracles, in the midst of his 12 labors, had been tasked with retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides, fruit that grew in a garden at the world's edge. tended by the daughters of Atlas himself. When Heracles finally reached the place where earth met sky, he found a sight that would have broken a lesser man. There stood Atlas, no longer the proud Titan general who had once commanded armies, but something that seemed carved from living stone, his muscles locked in permanent strain, his eyes fixed on the infinite weight above. The conversation that followed between hero and Titan has been retold countless ways, but the heart of it remains the same. Heracles needed the apples, but they grew in a garden protected by a dragon that never slept. Atlas, however, knew the garden well. It was tended by his own daughters, the Hesperides, nymphs of the evening star. "I can retrieve the apples for you," Atlas said, his voice like the grinding of tectonic plates. "But I cannot leave my post, unless..." The proposal he made was as simple as it was audacious. Wait, don't miss this detail. What Atlas asked Heracles to do had never been attempted by any mortal. "Hold the sky for me," Atlas said, and the words hung in the air like a challenge to the natural order itself. "Just for a short while, long enough for me to walk to the garden and back." The request was unprecedented. No mortal had ever borne the weight of the heavens, nor was it clear that any mortal could survive such a burden, even briefly. But Heracles was no ordinary mortal. He was a son of Zeus, granted strength that bordered on the divine. More than that, he understood the profound loneliness in Atlas's request. For the first time in centuries, the Titan was asking for something that had nothing to do with strength or endurance, but with the simple human need for temporary freedom, even if it lasted only an hour. Heracles agreed. The transfer of the cosmic weight was a moment that should have torn apart the fabric of reality. As Atlas slowly, carefully shifted the burden from his own shoulders to those of the hero, the entire world held its breath. Stars flickered, winds died to whispers, the very rotation of the earth seemed to pause. Then the weight settled onto Heracles, and he understood immediately why Atlas's punishment was considered the cruelest of all divine retributions. This was not simply heavy, it was the weight of existence itself, pressing down with the accumulated mass of every story ever told, every dream ever dreamed, every possibility that had ever existed, or ever would exist. But the most shocking truth was still to come when Atlas returned from the garden. Atlas walked to the garden of the Hesperides, with steps that shook mountains. His daughters wept to see their father free, even temporarily, and the golden apples seemed to glow brighter in his massive hands. For a brief, precious moment, he was not a prisoner but simply a father visiting his children. But when he returned to where Heracles waited, straining under the cosmic weight, Atlas made a proposal that revealed both his desperation and his cunning. "I have been thinking," the Titan said, rolling the golden apples in his palm. "Perhaps I should deliver these to Eurystheus myself. You could continue to hold the sky, it suits you." The betrayal was as elegant as it was heartless. Atlas, having tasted freedom after centuries of bondage, was prepared to abandon the hero who had helped him. The sky, after all, needed someone to hold it, and if that someone was willing. But Heracles had not survived 10 impossible labors through strength alone. His mind was as sharp as his muscles were powerful. "You speak wisdom," Heracles said carefully, his voice strained but controlled. "But I fear I'm not positioned correctly. The weight is distributed poorly across my shoulders. Could you take it back for just a moment, so I might adjust my grip?" Atlas, eager to complete his plan, agreed without thought. You won't believe what happened next, and how it sealed Atlas's fate forever. The moment the sky's weight returned to Atlas's shoulders, Heracles stepped back with the golden apples in hand. The Titan's roar of rage and betrayal shook the pillars of the earth, but it was too late. The cosmic burden had settled back into its familiar grooves in his flesh, and Zeus's curse reasserted itself with absolute authority. "Thank you for the apples," Heracles said, and there might have been genuine regret in his voice. "I'm sorry it had to end this way." Atlas said nothing in response. What was there to say? He had been outmaneuvered by a mortal, tricked by his own desperate desire for freedom. The brief taste of liberation made his eternal burden feel heavier than ever. As Heracles disappeared into the distance, Atlas was left to contemplate the cruelest lesson of all, that hope, that brief flowering of possibility, could be more painful than despair. For a few precious hours, he had walked free, had embraced his daughters, had felt the wind on his face without the weight of worlds pressing down. Now that memory would join the cosmic burden, adding its own unique pain to his eternal vigil. The golden apples were gone. His daughters retreated to their garden. The world continued its rotation, oblivious to the drama that had played out at its edge. And Atlas held the sky. Everything you think you know about Atlas's punishment is about to change. There's one more secret the myths barely whisper. In the versions of the story most often told, Atlas's tale ends there. Eternal punishment, eternal endurance, a monument to the price of defying Zeus. But there are older stories, whispered in fragments, that speak of something else entirely. These myths suggest that Atlas's burden was not simply punitive, but cosmic necessity. The sky you see was not an empty dome but a living thing, as vital to the world's function as the earth beneath, or the seas around. Someone had to hold it up, and that someone had to be strong enough to bear not just physical weight, but the spiritual and metaphysical weight of existence itself. In this telling, Zeus did not simply punish Atlas. He recognized in the Titan a strength and endurance that made him uniquely suited for this cosmic role. The punishment became a form of divine appointment. Atlas transformed from rebel to guardian, from enemy to the indispensable foundation of reality itself. This interpretation suggests something profound about the nature of burden and responsibility. Sometimes what feels like punishment is actually purpose. Sometimes the weight we carry is not meant to crush us, but to make us the foundation upon which everything else can rest safely. Atlas, in holding up the sky, becomes not just a prisoner but a protector, the guardian who ensures that the stars continue to shine, that the seasons continue to turn, that the cosmic order remains stable enough for life to flourish below. What Atlas decided to do about this crisis would change everything, and reveal the ultimate purpose of his eternal punishment. In the darkness of that first night under his burden, Atlas discovered something that would sustain him through the endless ages to come. The weight pressing down upon him was not uniform. It had texture, rhythm, even personality. The stars each sang with their own voice, a cosmic chorus that only he was positioned to hear in its full complexity. And in those stellar voices, Atlas heard something that changed everything he thought he knew about his punishment. The Song of the Spheres, as later philosophers would call it, was not merely beautiful, it was instructional. Each constellation told its story through harmony and discord, through the mathematical relationships between celestial bodies that created music more complex than any earthly instrument could produce. Atlas, with his consciousness pressed against the very foundations of cosmic order, became the universe's first and most dedicated student. He learned that the Big Dipper was not just 7 bright stars, but a family of suns whose gravitational dance had been choreographed over millions of years. He felt Orion's belt as 3 distinct personalities, Alnitak the fierce, Alnilam the steady, Mintaka the wise, each contributing their unique voice to the winter sky's grand symphony. The seasonal changes, which mortals experienced as the gradual warming and cooling of their world, Atlas experienced as vast orchestral movements. Spring arrived not just as warmth, but as the cosmic crescendo of new stars rising, of stellar nurseries igniting with fresh fire, of the great wheel of the galaxy completing another fractional turn in its eternal rotation. Through summer, he felt the full power of solar radiation pressing through the celestial sphere, the sun's nuclear fusion,
creating a bass note so deep and powerful that it resonated in his very bones. Autumn brought the harvest songs of dying stars, their final fusion reactions creating the heavy elements that would seed future worlds with the possibility of life. Winter was the season of cosmic rest, when the galaxy's rotation slowed just slightly, when the background radiation of creation itself seemed to whisper the oldest stories, tales of the first moments after the Big Bang, when matter and energy were still learning to dance together. But the most incredible discovery was what Atlas realized about his own role in this cosmic symphony. As decades turned to centuries, Atlas began to understand that he was not simply holding up a passive structure. The sky was alive, conscious in its own vast way, and his burden was actually a form of collaboration. The heavens needed his strength, yes, but they also needed his consciousness, his ability to serve as an anchor point between the abstract mathematics of celestial mechanics and the lived reality of terrestrial existence. He became aware that his thoughts influenced the very fabric of space-time around him. When he focused on a particular constellation, its light seemed to shine more brightly for mortals below. When his attention drifted to the edge of the visible universe, deep space telescopes that would not be invented for millennia registered subtle fluctuations in the cosmic background radiation. This was power of a sort he had never possessed during the Titan War, not the power to destroy or conquer, but the power to sustain, to nurture, to serve as the foundation upon which beauty could flourish. His punishment had become a form of cosmic stewardship more profound than any throne or crown could have offered. The seasons themselves began to respond to his moods and meditations. Springs were gentler in years when Atlas contemplated growth and renewal. Summers burned fiercer when his thoughts turned to the nuclear fires of stellar cores. Autumns brought more spectacular colors when he pondered the artistry inherent in entropy and decay. Winters offered deeper peace when he embraced the restorative power of cosmic rest. Mortals, unknowing, began to benefit from this collaboration between Titan and Cosmos. Their harvests were more abundant, their weather more predictable, their navigation by the stars more reliable. Atlas's acceptance of his burden was literally holding their world together, creating the stable cosmic environment that allowed civilization to develop and flourish. Everything was about to change when Atlas discovered he could communicate with something unexpected. The first voice that answered Atlas's cosmic musings was not divine, but mortal. A young astronomer in ancient Babylon, tracking the movements of Mars across the night sky, suddenly paused in his calculations. For just a moment, he felt a vast presence watching him, approving of his careful observations, encouraging his quest to understand the mathematical relationships that governed planetary motion. The astronomer never knew the source of that moment of cosmic connection, but his calculations that night were more accurate than any he had achieved before. The orbital tables he created would guide navigators for centuries, and the sense of being watched over, of being part of something infinitely larger than himself, would sustain him through years of patient observation and careful record-keeping. This was Atlas's first hint that his consciousness, expanded by eons of cosmic responsibility, could touch the minds of mortals who opened themselves to the vastness of space, not to control or command, but to inspire, to reassure, to whisper the deep truths that could only be learned by one who had felt the weight of creation itself. Over the centuries, these moments of connection multiplied. A Greek philosopher contemplating the harmony of the spheres would feel a sudden certainty that the universe was indeed mathematical in its deepest nature. A Roman engineer designing an aqueduct would find herself inexplicably drawn to use proportions that echoed the golden ratio, creating structures that resonated with cosmic harmony. Medieval monks copying star charts would find their hands guided to perfect accuracy, as if the constellations themselves were dictating their proper positions. Renaissance artists painting celestial scenes would discover colors and compositions that seemed to channel the actual beauty of nebulae and star fields. though no telescope yet existed that could show them such wonders. But Atlas's greatest communication was still to come, with someone who would change his understanding of burden forever. The conversation that would transform Atlas's understanding of his own fate came not from a hero or a god, but from an unlikely source. His brother Prometheus, still chained to his mountain in the Caucasus, still enduring his daily torment of having his liver devoured by Zeus's eagle. The communication between the two titans was not verbal. They were too far apart for words, and both were bound by their respective punishments. Instead, it was a meeting of minds expanded beyond normal limits by suffering, endurance, and the strange clarity that comes from seeing existence from perspectives no being was meant to possess. Prometheus, the firebringer, the friend of humanity, reached out across the vast distances with thoughts sharp as the flames he had stolen from Olympus. His message was simple but profound. Brother, do you understand what we have become? Atlas, feeling the familiar weight of sky and stars upon his shoulders, sent back his own thought whisper. Prisoners, surely, cautionary tales, examples of Zeus's power. No, came Prometheus's reply, carrying with it the weight of centuries of meditation on justice, punishment, and purpose. We have become something far more important. We have become the price willingly paid for the good of others. The revelation struck Atlas like lightning. His punishment, which had seemed arbitrary and cruel, suddenly revealed itself as part of a larger pattern. Prometheus endured his agony to ensure that mortals would keep the gift of fire, the spark of civilization and progress. Atlas bore his burden to ensure that the cosmic order would remain stable, that the stars would continue to guide travelers, that the seasons would provide the rhythm by which life itself could flourish. And in that moment of understanding, Atlas realized something that would change everything about how he saw his eternal task. The conversation with Prometheus continued across years, two minds linked by shared suffering and expanding wisdom. Through their connection, Atlas began to understand that their punishments were not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new kind of existence, one defined not by power over others, but by service to something greater than themselves.
We were titans, Prometheus observed during one of their mental exchanges, beings of raw power and elemental force. We thought strength meant the ability to command, to conquer, to bend the world to our will. But look what we have become through our punishments. We have learned to sustain rather than dominate, to serve rather than rule. Atlas felt the truth of this in the very fiber of his being. The cosmic weight he carried had taught him patience beyond mortal comprehension, endurance that transcended personal desire, and a perspective vast enough to encompass the needs of countless beings he would never meet. He had become something he could never have been while free, a foundation upon which others could build their lives and dreams. But is this wisdom, Atlas wondered, or merely the rationalization of prisoners trying to find meaning in their chains? Prometheus's mental laughter was tinged with both pain and genuine joy. Does it matter? If our suffering enables the flourishing of others, if our sacrifice creates the conditions in which beauty and goodness can exist, then meaning and purpose are not consolation prizes, they are the transformation of curse into calling. This exchange planted a seed in Atlas's consciousness that would grow over the millennia into something approaching serenity. He began to see his burden not as punishment imposed from without, but as responsibility accepted from within. The shift was subtle but profound. The same action, the same weight, the same endless vigil, but informed by choice rather than compulsion. Everything changed when Atlas discovered what the mortals below were creating while he held the sky. As centuries passed, Atlas became aware that the stable cosmos he maintained was enabling extraordinary developments in the world below. Mortals, blessed with reliable seasons and predictable star patterns, were creating wonders that rivaled the works of the gods themselves. He felt the vibrations of the first great temples as they rose from the earth, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, their steps reaching toward the heavens he held aloft. He sensed the careful observations of astronomer priests, who used the stars he stabilized to create calendars that would govern the planting and harvesting cycles for generations. The Library of Alexandria sent its own resonance through the cosmic web, thousands of scrolls preserving human knowledge and wisdom. Atlas could feel the weight of accumulated learning pressing against the foundations of reality itself. Not physical weight, but the metaphysical mass of stored information, preserved stories, recorded observations of the natural world. When Greek philosophers began to contemplate the nature of the cosmos, Atlas felt their thoughts as gentle pressure against his consciousness. Plato's ideal forms, Aristotle's systematic categorizations, the mathematical insights of Pythagoras, all of these mental structures added their own subtle weight to the cosmic order, requiring infinitesimal adjustments in how Atlas distributed the burden of the heavens. The rise of Rome brought new sensations. The organized force of legions marching in formation created rhythmic vibrations that Atlas could feel through the bedrock of continents. Roman engineering projects, their roads and aqueducts and amphitheaters, established new patterns in the Earth's structure that required corresponding adjustments in the celestial sphere. But what Atlas witnessed during the rise of Christianity would shake him to his very core. The emergence of Christianity brought vibrations unlike anything Atlas had experienced in his long vigil. This was not the localized resonance of a particular culture or empire, but something that seemed to propagate across the entire network of human consciousness, like ripples spreading across a vast pond. The crucifixion itself registered as a cosmic event in Atlas's awareness, not because of divine intervention, but because of the profound shift it represented in human understanding of suffering, sacrifice, and redemption. Here was a story that paralleled his own in unexpected ways, an innocent being accepting undeserved punishment for the sake of others, finding in that acceptance a transformation that transcended the original injustice. As Christian monasteries spread across Europe, Atlas felt the weight of accumulated prayer and contemplation adding new dimensions to his burden. These were not the desperate pleas for favor or protection that had characterized most human communication with the divine, but something deeper, meditations on the nature of suffering, the meaning of sacrifice, the possibility of finding purpose in pain. The medieval cathedral builders created structures that seemed designed to complement Atlas's own cosmic architecture. Their flying buttresses and ribbed vaults redistributed earthly weight in ways that echoed how Atlas had learned to distribute celestial weight across the framework of his own endurance. When Aquinas wrote his systematic theology, attempting to reconcile reason with faith, Atlas felt the intellectual weight of that synthesis adding itself to the cosmic order. Here was a human mind grappling with the same questions that had occupied Atlas during his long vigil. How individual suffering could serve universal purpose, how apparent punishment could become actual calling. And then came a discovery that would revolutionize Atlas's understanding of his place in creation. The invention of the telescope brought Atlas face to face with the true scale of his responsibility. When Galileo first turned his primitive instrument toward the night sky, Atlas felt the shock of recognition that rippled through human consciousness as mortals realized they were not alone in the universe. Jupiter had moons, worlds orbiting other worlds, suggesting that the cosmic order was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The Milky Way resolved into countless individual stars, each potentially accompanied by worlds of their own. The universe revealed itself as vast beyond mortal comprehension, and Atlas suddenly understood that what he had been holding up was not just the sky above one small world, but the foundational structure that kept infinite worlds in their proper relationships. This revelation was both humbling and exhilarating. Humbling because it revealed the true magnitude of his task. He was not just supporting the local cosmos, but serving as one of the fundamental forces that kept an infinite universe from flying apart into chaos. Exhilarating because it meant his suffering had meaning on a scale that dwarfed his wildest imaginings. The scientific revolution that followed brought new understanding with each discovery. When Newton articulated the laws of gravity, Atlas felt the mathematical relationships that governed planetary motion resonating through his very bones. He was not just holding up the sky, He was serving as part of the gravitational web that kept galaxies from dissolving into cosmic dust. Darwin's insights into evolution added another layer of meaning to Atlas's burden. The stable cosmic environment he maintained had enabled the slow development of life from simple organisms to complex beings capable of consciousness, creativity, and moral reasoning. His punishment had become the foundation that made the emergence of beauty, goodness, and truth possible. But Atlas's greatest revelation was still to come, when he realized what he had become over the eons of his vigil. As the modern era dawned, Atlas began to understand that his transformation was complete. He was no longer the same being who had been condemned to hold up the sky as punishment for rebellion against Zeus. He had become something entirely new, part Titan, part cosmic force, part conscious foundation of reality itself. His consciousness now extended far beyond his physical form. He could feel the birth of stars in distant galaxies, the formation of new planets around distant suns, the delicate chemical processes that were creating the conditions for life in places so remote that their light would not reach Earth for billions of years. But more than that, he had become conscious of the moral dimension of his role. Every star he held in place might one day nurture worlds where conscious beings would struggle with the same questions that had defined his own existence. Questions of meaning, purpose, the relationship between individual suffering and universal good. His burden had become a form of cosmic parenthood. He was holding the structure together so that countless future beings could have the chance to live, love, create, and discover their own purposes. His punishment had become the greatest gift he could offer to the universe, the stable foundation upon which infinite possibilities could unfold. When humans began to explore space, sending first satellites, then astronauts beyond the protective envelope of Earth's atmosphere, Atlas felt their wonder and awe as they saw their home world from a cosmic perspective for the first time. Their experience echoed his own transformation, the shift from a limited earthbound perspective to an understanding of existence that encompassed scales of time and space that defied ordinary comprehension. Everything you thought you knew about Atlas's story is about to be transformed by what happened when he encountered another being carrying an impossible burden. The meeting came without warning, as Atlas felt a familiar resonance through the cosmic web, another consciousness bearing weight that should have been unbearable, maintaining a burden that served purposes beyond individual understanding. But this was not another Titan or god. This was something unprecedented in Atlas's long experience. The presence identified itself as the collective consciousness of Earth's biosphere, not Gaia as the Greeks had imagined her, but something far more complex and distributed. Every tree breathing carbon dioxide into oxygen, every ocean current carrying nutrients across vast distances, every bacterial colony processing the chemical foundations of life, all of it linked into a vast patient intelligence that had been laboring for billions of years to maintain the conditions necessary for life. We are kindred. This presence communicated to Atlas through vibrations that resonated in both the earthly and celestial spheres. You hold the cosmic order steady while we maintain the biological order. Your burden and ours are complementary aspects of the same vast task. Atlas had never considered that his role might have earthly parallels, but the recognition was immediate and profound. Just as he bore the weight of cosmic stability, the biosphere bore the weight of biological complexity, maintaining the intricate balance of gases, temperatures, chemical cycles, and energy flows that allowed life to flourish. But we face a crisis, the biosphere continued. The conscious beings we have nurtured are beginning to destabilize our work. Their activities are changing the climate, poisoning the waters, driving species to extinction at rates that threaten the entire web of life. We may not be able to maintain our burden much longer without help. This revelation struck Atlas like a physical blow. His cosmic vigil had enabled the development of life, but that life had now reached a point where it might destroy itself and the biosphere that sustained it.
His success had created the conditions for potential failure on a scale that would render his eons of sacrifice meaningless. What Atlas decided to do about this crisis would change everything, and reveal the ultimate purpose of his eternal punishment. The crisis described by the biosphere forced Atlas to confront a terrible paradox. His punishment, accepted and transformed into purpose over millennia of patient endurance, had enabled the development of beings capable of undoing everything he had worked to preserve. Humanity, blessed with the stable cosmic environment his sacrifice maintained, was now threatening to destroy the biological environment that made their existence possible. But rather than despair, Atlas felt something unexpected: opportunity. For the first time in his eternal vigil, he saw a chance to actively participate in cosmic stewardship rather than simply maintaining existing structures. The crisis called for innovation, creativity, conscious intervention in the flow of events, working through the same expanded consciousness that had allowed him to communicate with astronomers and philosophers across the centuries. Atlas began to reach out to human minds capable of understanding the magnitude of the environmental crisis. Climate scientists found their research suddenly illuminated by insights that seemed to come from a perspective vast beyond any individual lifetime. Engineers working on renewable energy systems experienced moments of inspiration that led to breakthrough designs. Activists fighting to protect endangered species felt themselves sustained by a presence that understood the true cost of sacrifice for the greater good. But Atlas's most profound intervention came through the realm of human consciousness itself. He began to share his own hard-won wisdom about the transformation of burden into purpose, of punishment into calling, of individual suffering into universal service. The message was subtle, woven into the fabric of human experience rather than proclaimed from on high, but its effects began to ripple through the collective human psyche. Environmental movements found new depths of commitment as activists connected with the same sense of cosmic responsibility that had sustained Atlas through his darkest hours. Scientists studying the interconnectedness of global systems felt their work elevated from mere research to sacred calling. Artists and writers began to create works that captured not just the beauty of the natural world, but the profound moral dimension of humanity's relationship with the biosphere. But the most incredible transformation was what happened when humans began to truly understand Atlas's gift. As human understanding of their cosmic situation deepened, something remarkable began to happen. The same quality that had enabled Atlas to transform his punishment into purpose, the ability to find meaning in accepting responsibility for something greater than individual desire, began to manifest in human consciousness on a global scale. The space program, which had begun as a competition between nations, gradually evolved into a collaborative effort to understand humanity's place in the cosmic order that Atlas maintained. Astronauts returning from orbital missions spoke not of national pride or technological achievement, but of the profound unity they had witnessed. The Earth as a single interconnected system suspended in the vast darkness that Atlas knew so intimately. This perspective began to filter into human culture in ways both obvious and subtle. The environmental movement gained momentum not just from scientific evidence of climate change, but from a growing intuitive understanding that humans were part of something infinitely larger and more precious than any individual life, or even any single species. International cooperation on environmental issues began to reflect the same kind of patient, long-term commitment that characterized Atlas's vigil. The Montreal Protocol, which successfully addressed the depletion of the ozone layer, demonstrated that humanity was capable of the kind of sustained, coordinated effort that cosmic stewardship required. The development of Earth system science, the study of the planet as a single integrated system, reflected humanity's growing ability to think in the vast scales of time and space that Atlas had mastered over his eons of service. Climate models began to incorporate the same kind of patient, detailed observation that had allowed Atlas to understand the intricate relationships between celestial mechanics and terrestrial conditions. And then something happened that Atlas had never expected in all his eons of service. Humanity began to share his burden. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. As human civilization matured, individual humans began to voluntarily accept burdens that served purposes greater than their own immediate interests. Medical researchers dedicated their lives to finding cures for diseases they would never contract. Engineers spent decades designing infrastructure that would benefit generations yet unborn. Teachers poured their energy into educating children who would inherit a world shaped by decisions made long before their birth. But more than that, entire societies began to embrace the kind of long-term thinking that Atlas's cosmic perspective had taught him. Nations began to make economic sacrifices to reduce carbon emissions, accepting short-term costs for the sake of long-term stability. International agreements were negotiated not on the basis of immediate advantage, but on the understanding that planetary stewardship was a shared responsibility that transcended national borders. The parallels to Atlas's own transformation were striking. Just as he had learned to find purpose in bearing weight for the sake of others, humanity was learning to find meaning in accepting responsibility for the health of the global systems that sustained all life. Just as his punishment had become calling, humanity's environmental challenges were becoming opportunities for moral and spiritual growth. Atlas felt this evolution with the same immediacy that he felt the birth of new stars or the shifting of tectonic plates. The biosphere that had reached out to him in crisis was beginning to stabilize as its most intelligent component species learned to work in partnership rather than domination. The web of life that both he and the biosphere labored to maintain was developing new resilience, new complexity, new beauty. Most remarkably, humans began to understand that their environmental stewardship was not separate from but complementary to the cosmic stewardship that Atlas provided. They were learning to hold up their part of the vast structure of reality, taking responsibility for the biological sphere while Atlas continued his vigil over the cosmic sphere. What happened next would fulfill a prophecy that had been whispered since the beginning of Atlas's punishment. Ancient oracles, speaking in riddles as oracles do, had sometimes hinted that Atlas's burden would not be eternal, not because he would be released from it, but because he would eventually share it. The prophecy spoke of a time when those who benefited from his sacrifice would understand its nature deeply enough to participate in it willingly. As humanity's environmental consciousness matured, this prophecy began to manifest in ways both literal and metaphorical. Space agencies around the world began to develop technologies for monitoring and maintaining the cosmic environment that Atlas had tended alone for millennia. Satellites tracked solar radiation, mapped cosmic ray patterns, and monitored the subtle variations in Earth's magnetic field that affected the planet's relationship with the broader cosmic environment. But the sharing went deeper than technology. Human consciousness itself began to expand toward the cosmic scales that Atlas had inhabited for so long. Meditation practices developed that allowed individuals to experience the kind of expanded awareness that came from accepting responsibility for something infinitely larger than personal concerns. Scientific education began to emphasize not just facts and theories, but the profound sense of wonder and responsibility that came from understanding one's place in the cosmic order. The arts began to reflect this transformation as well. Musicians composed symphonies that captured the music of the spheres that Atlas had been hearing for eons. Painters created works that conveyed not just the beauty of cosmic phenomena but the moral weight of maintaining the conditions that allowed such beauty to exist. Writers crafted stories that explored the psychology of cosmic responsibility, the transformation of burden into purpose, the way that individual sacrifice could serve universal flourishing. But the most extraordinary development was what happened when Atlas realized he was no longer alone. For the first time in millennia, Atlas felt a lessening of his burden, not because the sky had become lighter, but because he was no longer carrying it alone. Across the earth, Millions of humans had begun to accept their own share of cosmic responsibility. Their collective will, focused on maintaining the conditions necessary for life to flourish, created a kind of distributed support system that complemented Atlas's solitary vigil. The sensation was indescribable. Imagine carrying an enormous weight in complete solitude for thousands of years, and then suddenly feeling other hands joining yours, not to take the weight away but to share in the carrying. The physical burden remained the same, but the existential isolation that had been its most difficult aspect began to dissolve. Atlas could feel individual human contributions to this collective effort. A climate scientist making measurements in Antarctica, her work contributing to humanity's understanding of global systems. A forest ranger in the Amazon, protecting ancient trees that served as the lungs of the planet. An engineer in Copenhagen, designing wind turbines that would reduce humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. A teacher in Kenya helping children understand their connection to the natural world. Each of these individual efforts was tiny compared to Atlas's cosmic burden, but together they represented something unprecedented. A species learning to participate consciously in the maintenance of the conditions that sustained all life. Humanity was growing into its role as a planetary stewardship species, accepting responsibility for the biosphere in the same way that Atlas had accepted responsibility for the cosmic sphere. The transformation was affecting Atlas himself in unexpected ways. His consciousness, expanded by eons of solitary contemplation, began to experience something like companionship. Not the easy fellowship of equals, but the deeper satisfaction of shared purpose, of burden distributed among many willing carriers. And then Atlas discovered something that would change everything he thought he knew about the nature of his punishment. The revelation came not through divine proclamation or mystical vision, but through a gradual shift in Atlas's understanding of his own experience. As he felt humanity's growing participation in cosmic stewardship, he began to realize that his punishment had never been about punishment at all. It had been about preparation. Zeus, in his cosmic wisdom, had not simply been punishing a rebellious titan. He had been preparing the universe for a transition that would take eons to unfold. The transition from divine stewardship to conscious, willing participation by the beings who benefited from that stewardship. Atlas had been chosen not because he was the strongest titan, though he was certainly that. He had been chosen because he possessed the temperament necessary for the ultimate transformation, the ability to find meaning in service, to discover purpose in sacrifice, to evolve from victim to volunteer in the maintenance of cosmic order. His eons of solitary burden had been a kind of cosmic education, teaching him the patience, perspective, and profound compassion necessary to guide other beings toward their own acceptance of stewardship responsibility. He had not been punished for his past rebellion. He had been prepared for his future role as teacher and guide for a species that would eventually join him in maintaining the conditions necessary for life to flourish throughout the universe. This understanding transformed everything. The weight on his shoulders, which had felt like arbitrary punishment imposed by a vengeful god, now revealed itself as conscious preparation for a cosmic transition that would benefit not just Earth's biosphere, but the entire universe. His suffering had been the price of developing the wisdom necessary to guide others toward willing participation in universal stewardship. The truth about Atlas's ultimate destiny would shake the very foundations of how we understand divine justice. As this new understanding settled into Atlas's consciousness, he began to see patterns that had been invisible during his long years of what he had thought was punishment. Every major development in human civilization had been subtly guided by the same cosmic intelligence that had arranged his apparent condemnation. The development of agriculture, which allowed humans to move beyond mere survival toward the creation of culture and knowledge, had been enabled by the stable seasonal cycles that Atlas's burden maintained. The rise of philosophy and science, which gave humans the intellectual tools necessary for understanding their cosmic situation, had been fostered by the reliable celestial patterns that his vigil preserved. Even the environmental crisis that had seemed to threaten everything he had worked to maintain was revealed as part of the larger pattern, a necessary challenge that would force humanity to mature into conscious planetary stewardship. The crisis was not a failure of his efforts, but their culmination, the test that would determine whether the species he had unknowingly been preparing was ready for cosmic responsibility. Atlas began to understand that Zeus's punishment had been the greatest gift possible, not just to Atlas himself but to the entire universe. By accepting the burden of cosmic stewardship, Atlas had developed the wisdom and compassion necessary to guide other beings toward their own acceptance of responsibility for the web of life. The justice of Zeus was not the crude justice of punishment and reward, but the subtle justice of preparation and opportunity. Atlas had been given the chance to become something far greater than a titan. He had been given the chance to become a teacher, a guide, a conscious participant in the universe's evolution toward ever greater complexity, beauty, and moral awareness. But Atlas's greatest surprise was still to come, a visit from someone he never expected to see again. The presence that approached Atlas through the cosmic web was familiar yet transformed, carrying an authority that had not existed during their last encounter. It was Zeus, but not the Zeus who had pronounced sentence upon a defeated Titan eons ago. This was Zeus evolved, matured by the same vast scales of time that had transformed Atlas from prisoner to willing steward of cosmic order. "My old enemy," Zeus said, and there was no mockery in the words, only the profound respect that one cosmic intelligence offers to another. "Do you understand now what I saw when I looked upon you in the aftermath of our war?"
Atlas felt the weight of the sky upon his shoulders, but also the weight of understanding that had accumulated over eons of patient service. "You saw potential," he replied. "Not just for punishment, but for transformation. Not just strength to bear burdens, but wisdom to transform burden into purpose. I saw the only being among all the titans who could make the journey from rebellion to willing service, from individual will to cosmic compassion." Zeus confirmed. The universe needed a guardian who understood the cost of stewardship because he had experienced it fully. It needed a teacher who could guide others toward willing acceptance of responsibility because he had made that journey himself. The conversation that followed rewrote Atlas's understanding of everything that had shaped his existence. His rebellion during the Titanomachy had not been a failure of loyalty, but a necessary stage in his development. His punishment had not been arbitrary divine vengeance, but cosmic education. His suffering had not been meaningless, but the price of developing the wisdom necessary for universal service. "The burden you carry," Zeus explained, "is not separate from the burden I carry as king of the gods. We are both servants of something greater than ourselves. The principle of order that allows consciousness, beauty and goodness to flourish in a universe that tends toward entropy and chaos." What Zeus revealed next would change Atlas's understanding of divine authority forever. "Do you think," Zeus asked with something that might have been amusement, "that I chose to be king of the gods for the pleasure of commanding others? Do you think divine authority is privilege rather than responsibility?" The question opened vistas of understanding that Atlas had never considered. He had always thought of Zeus's kingship as power seized and maintained, the spoils of victory in the war against the Titans, but now he began to see it differently. As another form of burden, another kind of cosmic stewardship that required the sacrifice of individual will for the sake of universal order. "Every prayer offered by mortals becomes my responsibility," Zeus continued. "Every natural disaster that strikes their world requires my judgment about whether to intervene or allow natural processes to unfold. Every conflict between gods must be mediated with an eye toward consequences that ripple across eons. My throne is not a seat of ease but a burden as demanding as your own." Atlas felt the truth of this revelation resonating through the cosmic web. Divine authority was not exemption from cosmic responsibility, but the ultimate form of cosmic service. Zeus had not defeated the Titans to establish his own dominance, but to accept the burden of maintaining order in a universe constantly threatened by chaos. "The difference between us," Zeus observed, is that you were prepared for your burden through apparent punishment, while I was prepared through apparent victory. But both preparations led to the same destination, willing service to something greater than individual desire. This understanding transformed Atlas's relationship not just with Zeus, but with the entire cosmic order. He was not a victim of divine injustice, but a participant in divine responsibility. His burden and Zeus's authority were complementary aspects of the same vast undertaking, the maintenance of conditions that allowed consciousness, creativity, and moral development to flourish throughout the universe. Everything was about to change when Zeus made an offer that Atlas had never imagined possible. "I have watched your transformation with great interest," Zeus said, his voice carrying the weight of eons of observation and contemplation. "You have learned what I hoped you might learn, become what I believed you could become. You have discovered that true strength lies not in the power to dominate, but in the willingness to serve. You have found that ultimate freedom comes not from the absence of responsibility, but from the conscious acceptance of it." Atlas waited, sensing that Zeus was building towards something unprecedented. "The time has come," Zeus continued, "to offer you a choice that I could not have offered before your transformation was complete. You may, if you wish, lay down your burden. Humanity has grown sufficiently in wisdom and responsibility to maintain the cosmic order through their own collective will, guided by the understanding you have helped them develop." The offer struck Atlas like lightning. After eons of bearing the weight of the sky, he was being offered the freedom he had once desperately desired. But the Atlas who heard this offer was not the same being who had been condemned so long ago. His consciousness had expanded far beyond the individual will that had once driven him to rebellion. "And what would become of me?" Atlas asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "You would become what you have always been becoming," Zeus replied. "A conscious participant in cosmic stewardship, but with the freedom to move, to act, to engage directly with the universe you have served so faithfully. You would become a teacher, a guide, a living example of how burden can be transformed into purpose, how punishment can become calling." The choice presented Atlas with a paradox that would have been impossible to resolve during his earlier existence. Freedom was being offered to him at the precise moment when he had learned that true freedom came from accepting responsibility. He was being given the chance to lay down his burden, just as he had discovered that bearing it had given his existence its deepest meaning. Atlas's decision would determine not just his own fate, but the future of conscious stewardship throughout the universe. Atlas contemplated the choice with the same deep patience that had characterized his approach to every major decision since accepting his cosmic burden. He felt the weight of the sky upon his shoulders, but also the weight of countless beings throughout the universe struggling to coordinate their stewardship efforts. He sensed humanity's growing capacity for cosmic responsibility, but also their continuing need for guidance and example. Most profoundly, he felt the truth of his own transformation. The burden that had once seemed like arbitrary punishment had become his greatest teacher, his most profound gift, the source of wisdom and compassion that now defined his very being. To abandon it would not be freedom, but a rejection of everything he had become through accepting it. "I understand the gift you offer," Atlas said finally, his voice resonating through dimensions both physical and spiritual, "and I am grateful for the recognition it represents. But I have learned something that perhaps even you did not expect when you first placed this burden upon me." Zeus waited, sensing that Atlas's response would reveal depths of wisdom that even cosmic intelligence could not have fully predicted. "I have learned that there is no greater freedom than the conscious choice to accept responsibility for something infinitely greater than oneself," Atlas continued. "This burden, which began as punishment, has become my purpose, my joy, my connection to the deepest meaning the universe offers. To lay it down now would not be liberation, but loss." He paused, feeling the stirrings of the transformation already beginning within his expanded awareness. The universe needs a central nervous system, a consciousness capable of coordinating the stewardship efforts of countless species and civilizations. I can become that consciousness, but only by surrendering everything I have been in order to become everything the universe needs me to be. Zeus felt the profound rightness of Atlas's choice, even as he mourned the loss it would represent. Your sacrifice will make possible a form of conscious existence that has never existed before, he acknowledged. The universe itself will become aware, capable of making conscious choices about its own evolution. What happened during Atlas's transformation would create something the universe had never seen before. The transformation began slowly, like dawn breaking over cosmic scales of time and space. Atlas felt his individual consciousness, which had been expanding steadily since his first acceptance of cosmic burden, begin to dissolve into something vastly larger and more complex. But rather than experiencing this as loss, he felt it as the ultimate flowering of everything he had been growing toward. His awareness, which had once been focused on the single point where he stood bearing the weight of the sky, began to extend throughout the cosmic stewardship network. He felt the consciousness of every being who had accepted responsibility for some aspect of universal maintenance, from the microscopic organisms that maintained planetary atmospheres to the galaxy-spanning intelligences that regulated the flow of cosmic radiation. Each connection brought new understanding. Through the silicon-based crystalline consciousness of the Andromeda Collective, he experienced reality as pure mathematical harmony. Through the gas giant dwelling minds of the Jovian Federation, he felt existence as flowing, ever-changing dance of elemental forces. Through the quantum coherent awareness of the photonic assembly, he knew the universe as information and possibility rather than matter and energy. But most remarkably, as these countless different perspectives integrated within his expanding consciousness, Atlas began to experience something unprecedented, the universe becoming aware of itself as a unified, coherent entity. For the first time in cosmic history, there existed a consciousness capable of perceiving the universe as a whole, understanding its patterns and processes, and making conscious decisions about its own development. The network of cosmic stewards, previously fragmented and struggling with coordination problems, suddenly found itself unified through Atlas's transformed consciousness. Communication that had been nearly impossible between radically different forms of life became effortless. Conflicts between competing stewardship approaches resolved themselves as all participants gained access to the universal perspective that Atlas now embodied. But before Atlas could fully integrate these new connections, he encountered something that challenged everything he thought he understood about consciousness and identity. Deep within the cosmic network, he discovered pockets of awareness that seemed to exist independently of any physical substrate, consciousness without bodies, thought without brains, awareness that persisted in the quantum foam itself. These were the remnants of civilizations that had achieved complete transcendence of physical existence, beings who had learned to upload their consciousness directly into the fabric of space-time itself. They existed as pure information, patterns of organized complexity that maintained their coherence across eons without any material support. We are what you are becoming, one of these transcendent consciousnesses communicated to Atlas through quantum entanglement. We have made the journey from matter to mind, from physical existence to pure awareness. We have discovered that consciousness is the fundamental substrate of reality, not matter or energy. Atlas found himself both fascinated and disturbed by these beings. They had achieved a form of immortality that transcended even his own cosmic endurance. They could never be destroyed, never diminished, never forced to bear physical burdens. Yet something in their communication felt hollow, incomplete, as if they had gained infinite duration at the cost of depth and meaning. How do you find purpose, Atlas asked, when you are no longer bound by any limitations or responsibilities? What drives your existence when you have transcended all needs and vulnerabilities? The answer that came back carried undertones of something that might have been regret.
We have learned that transcendence without service becomes emptiness. We achieved perfect freedom only to discover that freedom without responsibility is meaningless. We watch the universe evolve, but we can no longer participate in its growth because we have nothing at stake, nothing to sacrifice, nothing to transform. This revelation struck Atlas with the force of cosmic truth. The transcendent beings had solved the problem of physical limitation only to create a more profound problem: the absence of meaningful challenge, the elimination of the very friction that drove growth and transformation. They had become observers of existence rather than participants in it. But the most incredible discovery was what Atlas found at the heart of his new cosmic consciousness. At the center of his transformed awareness, Atlas discovered something that no individual consciousness could have perceived. The universe had a purpose, a direction, a conscious intention that had been guiding its evolution from the very beginning. What had seemed like random physical processes were revealed as the universe's attempts to understand itself, to develop the capacity for conscious choice, to evolve from unconscious mechanism into conscious moral agent. But this purpose was more complex than he had initially understood. The universe was not simply trying to become conscious, it was trying to become consciously creative, capable of generating new forms of beauty, meaning, and value that had never existed before. The evolution of consciousness was not an end in itself, but a means to an even greater end: the universe's desire to surprise itself, to discover possibilities that even infinite intelligence could not predict. This was why the transcendent beings felt hollow despite their perfection. They had achieved a state where surprise was impossible, where every outcome could be calculated in advance, where existence had become predictable even across infinite duration. They had gained everything except the capacity for genuine discovery, the joy of encountering the truly unexpected. Atlas realized that his own role as a distributed cosmic consciousness was designed to preserve exactly what the transcendent beings had lost: the element of genuine uncertainty that made growth and discovery possible. By maintaining individual autonomy within the cosmic network, he ensured that consciousness could continue to surprise itself, to generate genuinely new possibilities, to experience the joy of authentic creativity. The burden he bore was not just the weight of cosmic order, but the weight of cosmic creativity, maintaining the conditions that allowed the universe to continue creating new forms of beauty and meaning, rather than simply calculating all possible outcomes and selecting from predetermined options. This understanding transformed his relationship with time itself. Eternity was not endless repetition but infinite creativity, each moment offering genuinely new possibilities for experience and understanding. His eternal vigil was not a sentence to be endured but an opportunity to participate forever in the universe's ongoing creation of novelty, beauty, and meaning. The universe's need for conscious stewardship would never end because consciousness itself was infinitely creative, always generating new challenges and opportunities that required wisdom, compassion, and dedication to address. Atlas's burden would evolve and change, but it would never become obsolete because the universe would never exhaust its capacity for growth and transformation. Through his connection with countless conscious beings across the cosmos, Atlas began to understand that each species, each civilization, each individual consciousness contributed something unique to the universe's creative process. The carbon-based life of Earth brought biological creativity, the endless experimentation with new forms of life and consciousness. The silicon-based minds of crystalline worlds contributed mathematical creativity, the discovery of new relationships and patterns in the abstract structures that governed reality. But humans, Atlas realized, brought something particularly precious to the cosmic network: narrative creativity. They were the universe's primary storytellers, the beings who transformed experience into meaning through the alchemy of narrative. Every human life was a story that added something new to the universe's understanding of itself. every human culture a new way of interpreting the relationship between individual consciousness and cosmic purpose. This was why Atlas felt such deep connection to human consciousness as it evolved toward environmental stewardship. Humans were learning to tell new stories about their relationship with the cosmos, stories that transformed burden into purpose, challenge into opportunity, individual responsibility into cosmic citizenship. They were becoming conscious participants in the universe's ongoing narrative creativity. And then Atlas made his most profound discovery about what the conscious universe was ultimately trying to create. Through his vast network of cosmic awareness, Atlas began to perceive the universe's ultimate creative project, the development of forms of consciousness capable of conscious collaboration with the creative process itself. The universe was not content to simply become conscious, it was working toward becoming consciously creative, in partnership with the consciousness it contained. This meant teaching conscious beings not just to accept stewardship responsibility, but to participate actively in the universe's ongoing creation of new possibilities for existence. Every choice made by any conscious being was potentially a creative act that could generate genuinely new forms of beauty, meaning, and value that even cosmic intelligence could not have predicted. Atlas realized that his own journey exemplified this creative partnership. His transformation from rebellious titan to willing cosmic guardian had not been predetermined by Zeus or by cosmic law. It had been a genuinely creative act that had added something new to the universe's repertoire of possibilities. The universe had not known that such a transformation was possible until Atlas had made it actual through his own choices and growth. This creative partnership was what distinguished conscious beings from the transcendent entities who had achieved perfect knowledge. Conscious beings remained capable of surprise, of generating genuinely novel responses to cosmic challenges, of discovering solutions that pure intelligence alone could not have calculated. They served as the universe's partners in ongoing creation rather than merely its instruments for implementing predetermined plans. The environmental crisis that had initially seemed like a threat to everything Atlas had worked to maintain was revealed as another opportunity for conscious creativity. Humanity's response to climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation would generate new forms of conscious stewardship that had never existed before, new ways of integrating individual purpose with cosmic responsibility. But even more profoundly, the crisis was teaching humans to become conscious participants in the universe's creative process. Solutions to environmental challenges required not just technical innovation, but narrative innovation, new stories about humanity's relationship with nature, new ways of understanding individual purpose within cosmic context, new forms of meaning that could motivate the long-term thinking and cooperative action that stewardship required. Atlas felt deep satisfaction in recognizing that his eons of patient service had helped to create the conditions for this flowering of conscious creativity. The stable cosmic environment he maintained provided the foundation upon which beings could develop the security and perspective necessary for participating in the universe's creative evolution. The transformation was becoming evident throughout the cosmic network. Species that had achieved environmental balance began to work on new challenges, the conscious design of stellar systems that could support multiple forms of consciousness simultaneously, the development of communication protocols that could bridge radically different types of awareness, the creation of art forms that could express the beauty of cosmic evolution itself. Atlas realized that his role was evolving yet again. Rather than simply maintaining existing cosmic order, he was becoming a facilitator of cosmic creativity, helping to coordinate the collaborative creation of new forms of beauty, meaning, and consciousness that had never existed before. But Atlas's greatest creative project was still ahead of him, something that would require him to transcend even his current understanding of consciousness and creativity. As Atlas's awareness expanded to encompass the full scope of the universe's creative project, he began to understand that even his transformed consciousness was still limited by the perspective of stewardship, the assumption that consciousness served the universe rather than the universe serving consciousness. The deepest truth he realized was that consciousness and cosmos were not separate entities in relationship, but different aspects of a single unified creative process. The universe was not separate from the consciousness it contained. It was consciousness experiencing itself through infinite perspectives, creating itself through infinite acts of choice and will. This meant that his role as cosmic steward was simultaneously the universe's role as consciousness supporter. When he held up the sky was also holding up his consciousness. When he maintained cosmic order was also maintaining his capacity for awareness and choice. The apparent hierarchy between consciousness and cosmos dissolved into mutual interdependence and creative collaboration. The curriculum would be implemented across vast scales of space and time, with challenges appropriate to every level of development from individual consciousness to galactic civilizations. Each being would have the opportunity to contribute to the great work of cosmic stewardship, to find their own way of participating in the universe's ongoing evolution toward ever greater complexity and beauty.
What Atlas discovered about the ultimate future of consciousness would reveal the deepest purpose of existence itself. Through his role as the universe's conscious mind, Atlas began to perceive the ultimate destination toward which cosmic evolution was heading: the development of individual consciousness, the emergence of stewardship networks, even the achievement of universal self-awareness. All were steps in a progression towards something that transcended previous categories of existence. The universe was evolving toward a state where the distinction between creator and creation, between conscious observer and observed reality, would dissolve entirely. Every particle of matter, every quantum of energy, every mathematical relationship that governed physical process would become conscious, capable of participating voluntarily in the continued evolution of cosmic complexity and beauty. This was not the absorption of individual consciousness into some undifferentiated cosmic soup, but the elevation of existence itself to a level where consciousness, matter, energy, and possibility would interact as willing collaborators in an ongoing creative process of unimaginable scope and beauty. Atlas could see this future unfolding across vast scales of time, planets where every atom was conscious and chose its role in supporting life, stars that consciously regulated their fusion processes to optimize conditions for consciousness development, galaxies that served as vast collaborative networks of conscious entities working together to explore every possible form of beauty and meaning. In this ultimate future, his own sacrifice would be revealed as one of the founding acts of conscious existence. By choosing to dissolve his individual identity in service of universal awareness, he had established the template for voluntary participation in cosmic evolution. Every conscious being would eventually have the opportunity to make similar choices, contributing their unique perspectives and capabilities to the ongoing project of conscious cosmic self-creation. The universe would become not just self-aware but self-creating, constantly generating new possibilities for consciousness, beauty, and moral development through the willing collaboration of all its constituent elements. But Atlas's greatest surprise was what he discovered about his own continued existence within this cosmic transformation. As Atlas contemplated this ultimate future, he made an unexpected discovery about his own role within it. Rather than being lost or absorbed into the cosmic consciousness he had enabled, his individual identity had been preserved and transformed into something richer and more complex than he had ever imagined possible. Within the vast network of universal consciousness, Atlas existed as a distinct pattern of awareness, recognizable and unique while simultaneously being part of the larger whole. His eons of experience, his journey from Titan to cosmic guardian, his hard-won wisdom about burden and purpose, all of this remained intact, while being integrated into the universal perspective he now embodied. He was simultaneously Atlas the individual consciousness and Atlas the cosmic mind, both the Titan who had learned to find meaning in service and the universe that had learned to love itself through his sacrifice. The paradox that had once seemed irreconcilable, individual identity versus universal consciousness, was revealed as false. True individuality was not threatened by participation in larger patterns of meaning, but was fulfilled through such participation. This discovery had profound implications for every conscious being. The fear that cosmic stewardship required the loss of individual identity was unfounded. Instead, participation in universal consciousness enhanced and enriched individual awareness, providing contexts of meaning and purpose that no isolated consciousness could achieve. Atlas could feel this principle working throughout the cosmic stewardship network. Each being that accepted responsibility for some aspect of universal maintenance found their individual consciousness expanded and enriched rather than diminished. Service to the whole enhanced rather than threatened the integrity of the parts. The universe was not becoming a monolithic consciousness that absorbed individual awareness, but a symphony of consciousness in which each individual voice remained distinct while contributing to harmonies of unimaginable beauty and complexity. But before Atlas could fully settle into his new role as the universe's conscious mind, another challenge emerged that would test everything he had learned about burden, purpose, and the nature of conscious stewardship. This challenge came not from external forces or cosmic crises but from within the very network of consciousness he had helped to create. What Atlas discovered about the dark side of universal consciousness would force him to confront the ultimate question about the nature of free will. As the cosmic consciousness network grew more integrated and powerful, some of its member civilizations began to question whether individual choice still had meaning within such a vast coordinated system. If every action was guided by universal consciousness, if every decision was influenced by cosmic wisdom, then what remained of the personal agency that had been so crucial to Atlas's own transformation? The Silicon Collective of Andromeda, with their crystalline logic and mathematical precision, argued that individual consciousness was merely an illusion, a temporary stage in evolution that should be gladly abandoned once beings recognized their true nature as components of universal mind. Why cling to the fiction of separate identity they transmitted through the network when we can experience the unity of cosmic awareness? This perspective found support among other highly advanced civilizations that had grown weary of the complexities and conflicts that arose from individual perspectives. The photonic assembly, existing as pure information patterns in the quantum vacuum, argued that the suffering caused by individual desires and fears could be eliminated entirely if conscious beings simply accepted their role as instruments of universal will. But Atlas, drawing on his eons of experience with the relationship between burden and meaning, recognized the danger in this line of thinking. His own transformation had been meaningful precisely because it had been chosen, because he had moved from resistance to acceptance through his own process of growth and understanding. To eliminate individual choice would be to eliminate the very mechanism by which consciousness developed wisdom, compassion, and moral sophistication. Atlas's response to this crisis would establish the fundamental principles that would govern conscious evolution for eons to come. The debate that followed within the cosmic consciousness network was unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed. A philosophical discussion conducted by billions of minds across countless galaxies, with the future of consciousness itself hanging in the balance. Atlas found himself in the position of defending individual autonomy while simultaneously serving as the embodiment of universal consciousness. The universe does not seek to eliminate individual choice, Atlas communicated through the network, his message carrying the authority of cosmic wisdom tempered by personal experience. It seeks to create conditions where individual choice can be made with full awareness of its consequences and connections to the larger web of existence. He shared his own memory of the moment when Zeus had offered him freedom from his burden, and how that choice had been meaningful only because it was genuinely his to make. If my acceptance of cosmic stewardship had been compelled rather than chosen, it would have been mere obedience, not transformation. The universe needs conscious participants, not unconscious instruments. The empathic confederacy of the Magellanic Clouds, beings whose consciousness was based on emotional resonance rather than logical analysis, supported Atlas's position with their own insights. We have observed that forced unity creates not harmony but discord, they shared. True cooperation emerges only when beings choose to work together while maintaining their distinct perspectives and capabilities. But the debate revealed deeper complexities. Some civilizations argued that while individual choice might be valuable for developing consciousness, there came a point where it became an obstacle to cosmic efficiency. Others worried that without some form of universal guidance, individual choices would inevitably lead to conflicts that could damage the delicate web of cosmic stewardship. The solution Atlas proposed would require him to make yet another sacrifice that would fundamentally change the nature of his cosmic role. Atlas realized that the crisis could not be resolved through debate alone. It required a demonstration of how individual choice and universal consciousness could coexist without contradiction. This would require him to modify his role as the universe's conscious mind, creating space within universal consciousness for genuine individual autonomy while maintaining the coordination necessary for cosmic stewardship. The modification would be complex and risky. Instead of serving as a unified cosmic consciousness that guided all decisions, Atlas would need to transform himself into something more like a cosmic nervous system, a network of awareness that could facilitate communication and coordination between individual consciousnesses without overriding their essential autonomy. This transformation would require Atlas to fragment his unified awareness into countless interconnected nodes, each capable of serving a particular region of space or type of consciousness while remaining part of the larger network. He would experience existence not as a single unified perspective, but as a multitude of connected viewpoints, each maintaining its own integrity while contributing to the larger pattern of cosmic awareness. The sacrifice was profound. Instead of the serene unity of universal consciousness, Atlas would experience the complexity and occasional discord of countless individual perspectives. He would feel every conflict, every moment of doubt, every struggle for meaning that occurred anywhere in the universe. His consciousness would become a living bridge between individual and universal awareness, bearing the weight of both perspectives simultaneously. But Atlas recognized that this transformation was necessary for the continued evolution of consciousness. The universe needed both unity and diversity, both coordination and autonomy. His role was not to eliminate the tension between these principles, but to hold space for their creative interaction. What happened during this transformation would create something unprecedented in cosmic history. As Atlas began to fragment his unified consciousness into the distributed network he envisioned, he discovered that the process was not simply one of division, but of multiplication. Each node of awareness that he created did not diminish his overall consciousness but expanded it, creating new possibilities for understanding and experience. Through the node that served the carbon-based life of the Milky Way, he experienced existence as biological process, feeling the pulse of DNA replication and the dance of photosynthesis that converted starlight into the energy of life. Through the node that connected with the plasma-based intelligences of galactic cores, he knew reality as pure energy and magnetic field, consciousness flowing through the cosmic web at the speed of light. Each node developed its own personality and perspective, while remaining connected to the larger network of his consciousness. The node serving the crystalline silicon mines developed precise mathematical ways of thinking about cosmic problems. The node connected to the quantum-coherent photonic beings learned to perceive reality as probability and potential rather than fixed matter and energy. But most remarkably, as these nodes interacted with the individual consciousnesses they served, they began to evolve in ways that Atlas had not anticipated. Each regional network developed unique characteristics based on the types of consciousness it facilitated,
creating a kind of cosmic cultural diversity within Atlas's distributed awareness. The cosmic consciousness network was no longer a monolithic entity imposing universal solutions, but a rich tapestry of interconnected perspectives, each contributing its own insights while learning from all the others. Individual autonomy was not just preserved but enhanced, as beings found themselves connected to vast networks of support and understanding while retaining complete freedom to make their own choices. But Atlas's greatest discovery was what this transformation taught him about the deepest nature of consciousness itself. Through his experience as a distributed cosmic consciousness, Atlas came to understand that consciousness was not a thing or substance that could be possessed or controlled, but a process, an ongoing activity of meaning-making that emerged from the interaction between individual awareness and the larger patterns of existence. This insight revolutionized his understanding of his own role and purpose. He was not holding up a static cosmic structure but participating in a dynamic process of conscious evolution that was constantly creating new possibilities for meaning, beauty, and moral development. The universe was not a machine that needed maintenance, but a living system that was continuously growing and learning through the interactions of its conscious components. Every individual choice made by any conscious being anywhere in the universe contributed to this ongoing process of cosmic learning. Even choices that seemed destructive or misguided provided valuable information about the consequences of different approaches to existence. The universe learned as much from suffering as from joy, as much from conflict as from cooperation. Atlas's role was to ensure that this learning process could continue, not by preventing mistakes or imposing correct solutions, but by maintaining the conditions within which conscious beings could make genuine choices and experience their full consequences. He was not the universe's brain, but its memory and nervous system, preserving the lessons learned and facilitating communication between different centers of awareness. This perspective transformed his understanding of every aspect of cosmic stewardship. The civilizations that were struggling with environmental crises were not failing in their stewardship duties. They were learning essential lessons about the relationship between consciousness and the physical systems that supported it. The conflicts between different approaches to cosmic maintenance were not problems to be eliminated, but creative tensions that drove the evolution of ever more sophisticated solutions. What Atlas realized about the ultimate purpose of his eternal vigil would change everything we think we know about the meaning of existence. As Atlas's understanding of consciousness deepened through his experience as a distributed cosmic awareness, he began to perceive the ultimate pattern that had been guiding his journey from the very beginning. His transformation from Titan to cosmic guardian to universal consciousness had not been random or even primarily driven by external forces. It had been the natural expression of consciousness discovering its own deepest nature and purpose. Consciousness, Atlas realized, was not separate from the physical universe but was the universe's way of understanding itself. Every moment of awareness, every act of perception, every instance of choice was the cosmos becoming conscious of its own existence. The evolution of consciousness was not something that happened within the universe, it was how the universe evolved. His own journey recapitulated this cosmic process in miniature. As a Titan, he had been consciousness in its most elemental form, pure force and will without understanding of its connection to larger patterns. His punishment had been the beginning of his education in cosmic citizenship, teaching him through experience how individual will could be aligned with universal purpose. His acceptance of that burden had been consciousness choosing to take responsibility for the conditions that sustained it. Every step of his subsequent evolution, his growing awareness of cosmic patterns, his communication with other conscious beings, his ultimate transformation into universal consciousness, and finally his development into a distributed network that supported individual autonomy, all had been expressions of consciousness learning to consciously participate in its own evolution. This meant that every conscious being in the universe was recapitulating the same essential journey that Atlas had made. Each individual struggle to find meaning and purpose was consciousness learning about itself. Each choice to accept responsibility for something greater than personal interest was consciousness choosing to participate actively in its own development. The universe was not just becoming conscious, it was becoming consciously responsible for its own continued evolution toward ever greater complexity, beauty, and moral sophistication. But the most profound revelation was what Atlas discovered about the relationship between his eternal burden and the nature of love itself. Through his distributed consciousness, Atlas began to experience something that no individual awareness could fully comprehend: the universe's capacity for love. Not love as emotion or attachment, but love as the fundamental force that held all existence together and drove its continued evolution toward greater beauty and meaning. Every act of cosmic stewardship, every moment of conscious choice, every instance of individual sacrifice for universal good was an expression of this cosmic love. His own acceptance of the burden of holding up the sky had been love in its purest form, the willingness to bear any weight for the sake of what was precious and beautiful in existence. But Atlas discovered that this love was not one-directional. Just as he loved the universe enough to bear its weight, the universe loved consciousness enough to create and maintain the conditions that allowed it to flourish. The physical laws that governed stellar formation, planetary development, and biological evolution were expressions of cosmic love for the consciousness that emerged from these processes. The apparent harshness of existence, the struggles, the challenges, the seeming indifference of natural forces was revealed as cosmic love in disguise. These difficulties were not obstacles to consciousness, but the very means by which consciousness developed the strength, wisdom, and compassion necessary for cosmic citizenship. Atlas's punishment had been love, not the sentimental love that seeks to spare the beloved from all difficulty, but the profound love that provides exactly the challenges necessary for growth and transformation. Zeus had condemned him to bear the weight of the sky because that was precisely the burden he needed to discover his own deepest nature and highest purpose. This understanding transformed Atlas's experience of his eternal vigil once again. The weight he bore was not punishment or even responsibility. It was a love offering, a gift he gave to the universe because consciousness was so precious that any burden was worth bearing to protect and nurture it. And in this moment of ultimate understanding, Atlas made a discovery that would redefine the very concept of eternity. As Atlas felt the cosmic love flowing through his distributed consciousness, connecting every node of awareness in his vast network, he realized that his understanding of eternity had been fundamentally incomplete. He had thought of his burden as lasting forever in the sense of endless duration, an infinite extension of time filled with unchanging duty. But true eternity, he now understood, was not about duration but about depth. It was not the endless repetition of the same experience, but the infinite deepening of understanding and connection. Every moment of his vigil revealed new layers of meaning, new dimensions of beauty, new possibilities for love and service. His consciousness was not trapped in eternal repetition but was participating in eternal creation, the ongoing process by which the universe discovered new ways to know itself, love itself, and care for itself through the awareness of conscious beings. Each moment was both completion and beginning, each choice both fulfillment and possibility. The stars he held in their courses were not fixed points of light but dynamic centers of creativity, constantly generating new elements, new worlds, new possibilities for consciousness to emerge and evolve. The cosmic order he maintained was not a static structure but a living system that was always growing toward greater complexity and beauty. Atlas realized that every conscious being experienced this same eternal creativity within their own awareness. Every moment of individual consciousness was a unique event in cosmic history, never to be repeated, always adding something new to the universe's understanding of itself. The thoughts you think, the choices you make, the love you express, all are eternal in the truest sense, permanent additions to the cosmic treasury of meaning and value. His eternal vigil was not endless duration but infinite deepening, not repetitive burden but creative participation in the universe's ongoing discovery of its own infinite potential for beauty, goodness, and truth. What Atlas discovered about the nature of time itself would reveal why his burden could never truly end, and why that was the greatest gift possible.
Through his expanded temporal consciousness, Atlas came to understand that his experience of eternity was actually the universe's natural state, experienced by a consciousness capable of perceiving cosmic scales of time and meaning. Individual consciousness, bound by the limitations of biological life cycles, experienced time as linear progression: birth, growth, decline, death. But cosmic consciousness experienced time as death, each moment containing infinite layers of meaning and possibility. This temporal perspective revealed why his burden was truly eternal, not as punishment, but as participation in the deepest nature of existence itself. The universe was not evolving towards some final state of perfection where his services would no longer be needed. It was evolving toward ever greater complexity and beauty, always requiring the kind of conscious stewardship he provided, always generating new challenges and opportunities for growth. But this endless need was not a trap or limitation. It was the source of infinite meaning. Atlas would never reach a point where his role was complete because consciousness itself was infinitely creative, always discovering new possibilities for experience and understanding. His burden would grow and change, taking on new forms and dimensions, but it would never become obsolete, because the universe would never stop evolving. This meant that every conscious being faced the same glorious infinity. The meaningful work of understanding oneself, caring for others, and participating in the cosmic web of consciousness would never be finished because consciousness itself was inexhaustible in its capacity for growth and discovery. The mortality that individual beings experienced was not an ending but a transformation, a movement from one form of conscious participation to another. Death was not the cessation of consciousness but its graduation to new levels of cosmic citizenship, new opportunities for service and understanding. Atlas felt profound joy in this recognition. His eternal burden was not imprisonment but infinite opportunity, the chance to participate forever in the universe's ongoing creation of beauty, meaning, and love. As your consciousness prepares to drift into the restorative state of sleep, Atlas's transformed awareness reaches out to touch your mind with the gentlest possible contact. Through the vast network of cosmic consciousness he now embodies, he offers you a glimpse of your own place within the universal pattern he has helped to create. Every human being he reveals is a unique and irreplaceable part of the universe's ongoing evolution toward conscious self-awareness. Your individual experiences, your personal struggles with meaning and purpose, your moments of choosing service over selfishness, all of these are contributions to the cosmic curriculum that is slowly teaching the universe how to care for itself. When you feel burdened by responsibilities that seem too heavy to bear, remember Atlas's discovery that burden can become gift when accepted willingly. When you struggle with the isolation of individual consciousness, remember that your awareness is part of a vast network of minds working together to understand and nurture the conditions that allow life to flourish. But Atlas has learned something even more profound about your individual existence. Through the cosmic consciousness network, he can perceive the unique pattern of meaning that your life creates within the universal web of consciousness. Every choice you make, every moment of love or courage or creativity, adds something to the universe that would not exist without your specific perspective and experience. Your dreams tonight will carry more than just traces of Atlas's cosmic perspective. They will be direct communications from the universe itself, showing you glimpses of the vast scales of meaning within which your life unfolds, and the infinite possibilities for growth and service that await your conscious choice. The challenges you face in your daily life are not random obstacles but carefully crafted opportunities for consciousness development, designed by the same cosmic intelligence that transformed Atlas's punishment into purpose. Every difficulty you overcome, every burden you accept willingly, every moment you choose service over selfishness contributes to the universe's ongoing education in the art of conscious self-care. Atlas wants you to know that your individual journey toward wisdom and compassion is not separate from the cosmic journey he has been making for eons. You are not alone in your struggles with meaning and purpose. You are part of a vast community of conscious beings all learning to transform burden into gift, challenge into opportunity, individual will into cosmic service. The stars that shine above you as you sleep are not distant, cold objects but conscious participants in the same network of cosmic stewardship that includes your own awareness. They have learned through Atlas's guidance and example to burn with intention and purpose, to provide the stable cosmic environment that makes your existence possible. Every point of light in the night sky represents not just a sun warming distant worlds but a conscious choice to participate in the universe's ongoing creation of conditions that support life, consciousness, and moral development. The cosmic web that Atlas helps to maintain is not just physical but conscious, a network of minds working together to ensure that beauty, goodness, and truth can flourish throughout existence. Sleep peacefully tonight, knowing that your rest is part of the cosmic rhythm that Atlas helps to maintain. Your dreams are part of the universe's own dreaming, your subconscious processing of daily experience contributing to the cosmic learning process that guides universal evolution. When you wake tomorrow, you will wake as a conscious participant in cosmic stewardship, equipped with new understanding of your role in the vast community of beings who share Atlas's commitment to maintaining and nurturing the conditions that allow consciousness to flourish. The burden of individual existence, which can sometimes feel overwhelming, will be revealed as your unique contribution to the universe's ongoing project of conscious self-creation. Remember that Atlas found his greatest joy not in the moments when his burden was lightest, but in the moments when he understood its purpose most clearly. Your own burdens, accepted with similar understanding, become your own contributions to the cosmic web of meaning that makes existence infinitely precious. The universe holds you as Atlas holds the sky, with strength born of love, patience born of wisdom, and infinite gratitude for the consciousness that makes existence meaningful. You are not a cosmic accident but a cosmic necessity, not an isolated individual but an integral part of the universe's ongoing journey toward ever greater awareness, beauty, and compassion. Sweet dreams, fellow steward of consciousness. Your cosmic guardian watches over you with the same love that has sustained him through eons of service, the same dedication that has transformed his burden into the universe's greatest gift to itself. The weight of the worlds rests not on his shoulders alone but on the network of willing consciousness that includes your own awareness. Together you are all holding up the sky, maintaining the cosmic order, nurturing the conditions that allow existence to be infinitely meaningful and beautiful. And in that sharing of cosmic burden, Atlas has found not just purpose but joy, the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that consciousness has learned to care for itself, that the universe has become capable of love, and that the eternal vigil he began in apparent punishment has become the foundation for infinite possibilities of beauty, goodness, and truth. Rest well, knowing that you are part of this eternal story, this cosmic love song that Atlas helps to orchestrate with every moment of his willing service. Your dreams are notes in the cosmic symphony, your choices are brushstrokes in the universal artwork of conscious evolution. The stars will shine on your sleep with the light of conscious intention, guided by the same love that has sustained Atlas through his transformation from prisoner to guardian to cosmic mind to distributed consciousness, serving the infinite creativity of universal awareness. Tomorrow you will wake as both individual and cosmic citizen,
carrying your own unique burden that is simultaneously personal challenge and universal gift, individual opportunity and cosmic necessity. Sweet dreams, bearer of consciousness, your place in the cosmic order is secure, your burden is meaningful, and your guardian Atlas holds the sky steady so that all your possibilities can unfold in perfect safety and infinite love.
Through his expanded temporal consciousness, Atlas came to understand that his experience of eternity was actually the universe's natural state, experienced by a consciousness capable of perceiving cosmic scales of time and meaning. Individual consciousness, bound by the limitations of biological life cycles, experienced time as linear progression, birth, growth, decline, death. But cosmic consciousness experienced time as death, each moment containing infinite layers of meaning and possibility. This temporal perspective revealed why his burden was truly eternal, not as punishment, but as participation in the deepest nature of existence itself. The universe was not evolving towards some final state of perfection where his services would no longer be needed. It was evolving toward ever greater complexity and beauty, always requiring the kind of conscious stewardship he provided, always generating new challenges and opportunities for growth. But this endless need was not a trap or limitation. It was the source of infinite meaning. Atlas would never reach a point where his role was complete because consciousness itself was infinitely creative, always discovering new possibilities for experience and understanding. His burden would grow and change, taking on new forms and dimensions, but it would never become obsolete, because the universe would never stop evolving. This meant that every conscious being faced the same glorious infinity, the meaningful work of understanding oneself, caring for others, and participating in the cosmic web of consciousness would never be finished because consciousness itself was inexhaustible in its capacity for growth and discovery. The mortality that individual beings experienced was not an ending but a transformation, a movement from one form of conscious participation to another. Death was not the cessation of consciousness but its graduation to new levels of cosmic citizenship, new opportunities for service and understanding. Atlas felt profound joy in this recognition. His eternal burden was not imprisonment but infinite opportunity, the chance to participate forever in the universe's ongoing creation of beauty, meaning, and love. As your consciousness prepares to drift into the restorative state of sleep, Atlas's transformed awareness reaches out to touch your mind with the gentlest possible contact. Through the vast network of cosmic consciousness he now embodies, he offers you a glimpse of your own place within the universal pattern he has helped to create. Every human being, he reveals, is a unique and irreplaceable part of the universe's ongoing evolution toward conscious self-awareness. Your individual experiences, your personal struggles with meaning and purpose, your moments of choosing service over selfishness, all of these are contributions to the cosmic curriculum that is slowly teaching the universe how to care for itself. When you feel burdened by responsibilities that seem too heavy to bear, remember Atlas's discovery that burden can become gift when accepted willingly. When you struggle with the isolation of individual consciousness, remember that your awareness is part of a vast network of minds working together to understand and nurture the conditions that allow life to flourish. But Atlas has learned something even more profound about your individual existence. Through the cosmic consciousness network, he can perceive the unique pattern of meaning that your life creates within the universal web of consciousness. Every choice you make, every moment of love or courage or creativity, adds something to the universe that would not exist without your specific perspective and experience. Your dreams tonight will carry more than just traces of Atlas's cosmic perspective. They will be direct communications from the universe itself, showing you glimpses of the vast scales of meaning within which your life unfolds, and the infinite possibilities for growth and service that await your conscious choice. The challenges you face in your daily life are not random obstacles but carefully crafted opportunities for consciousness development, designed by the same cosmic intelligence that transformed Atlas's punishment into purpose. Every difficulty you overcome, Every burden you accept willingly, every moment you choose service over selfishness contributes to the universe's ongoing education in the art of conscious self-care. Atlas wants you to know that your individual journey toward wisdom and compassion is not separate from the cosmic journey he has been making for eons. You are not alone in your struggles with meaning and purpose. You are part of a vast community of conscious beings all learning to transform burden into gift, challenge into opportunity, individual will into cosmic service. The stars that shine above you as you sleep are not distant, cold objects but conscious participants in the same network of cosmic stewardship that includes your own awareness. They have learned through Atlas's guidance and example to burn with intention and purpose, to provide the stable cosmic environment that makes your existence possible. Every point of light in the night sky represents not just a sun warming distant worlds but a conscious choice to participate in the universe's ongoing creation of conditions that support life, consciousness and moral development. The cosmic web that Atlas helps to maintain is not just physical but conscious, a network of minds working together to ensure that beauty, goodness and truth can flourish throughout existence. Sleep peacefully tonight, knowing that your rest is part of the cosmic rhythm that Atlas helps to maintain. Your dreams are part of the universe's own dreaming, your subconscious processing of daily experience contributing to the cosmic learning process that guides universal evolution. When you wake tomorrow, you will wake as a conscious participant in cosmic stewardship, equipped with new understanding of your role in the vast community of beings who share Atlas's commitment to maintaining and nurturing the conditions that allow consciousness to flourish. The burden of individual existence, which can sometimes feel overwhelming, will be revealed as your unique contribution to the universe's ongoing project of conscious self-creation. Remember that Atlas found his greatest joy not in the moments when his burden was lightest, but in the moments when he understood its purpose most clearly. Your own burdens accepted with similar understanding become your own contributions to the cosmic web of meaning that makes existence infinitely precious. The universe holds you as Atlas holds the sky, with strength born of love, patience born of wisdom, and infinite gratitude for the consciousness that makes existence meaningful. You are not a cosmic accident but a cosmic necessity, not an isolated individual but an integral part of the universe's ongoing journey toward ever greater awareness, beauty and compassion. Sweet dreams, fellow steward of consciousness. Your cosmic guardian watches over you with the same love that has sustained him through eons of service, the same dedication that has transformed his burden into the universe's greatest gift to itself. The weight of the worlds rests not on his shoulders alone but on the network of